Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second Weatherization Wednesday of this year's Button Up campaign. I see people trickling in, but I'll definitely give it a minute or so for more people to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. As you are joining, it'd be great if you could put in the chat if you're here on Zoom or if you're joining us from Facebook, put it in the comments there, where you're tuning in from and what brought you here today. I'll put that in the chat as well. Welcome, Kimberly and Bob. I should be more clear about my prompt. Where are you tuning in from as far as location? or if you're coming from Zoom or Facebook, that's good to know too. Awesome, looks like we have a lot of folks joining us. I think we can go ahead and get started. So just so you know, we are recording this session and it will be posted on our YouTube afterwards. Okay, welcome and thank you all for being here. I'm really excited for today's Weatherization Wednesday, where we'll be addressing some common questions that residents have about weatherizing their homes. My name is Bekah Kuster. I'm a community engagement manager with Efficiency Vermont, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Matt Sharpe, who's an energy consultant and weatherization expert at Efficiency Vermont. He's really the star of the show. He'll give a great presentation and we'll follow it up with Q&A. If you do have questions that come up during Matt's presentation, please put them in the Q&A if you're joining us here on Zoom. And if you're tuning in on Facebook, you can put your questions in the comments there, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible. Before I do hand it over to Matt, I just want to mention that one of you lucky attendees will be randomly selected to win a $50 gift card to a local hardware store. We'll do that drawing after the webinar, but be on the lookout for an email from us if you are the lucky winner. Okay, with that, I'll say thanks so much, Matt, for being here today, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Bekah. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, through this presentation, you'll get a good chance to learn about some basics of weatherization and some things you might be able to do to help fix your home and stop wasting so much energy. Yeah, like Bekah said, I'm an energy consultant here. Spend a lot of time talking on the phone to people and helping people through projects, helping them find contractors. So I, really excited to talk to you, and keep in mind the Efficiency Vermont is available to help you. So give us a call and go to our website to get lots more information. So let me share my screen. And we'll get the presentation going. Can you see that okay?
That looks great.
Awesome. All right, so we went through the introduction. We have 7 questions that we get often, so we're calling them the top 7, and we'll go through those in the presentation. And then we'll have time for your questions and some discussions that might be specific to your situation that probably relate to lots of other people's situation as well. So number 1 question, my house is drafty. I should replace my windows first, right? Well, not necessarily. So yes, windows tend to be poor, especially single pane windows that aren't weather stripped well. But there may be, and likely are, lots of other places where you're losing that hot air or that cold drafts are coming in. While replacing windows really does save energy, the main problem with it is that it comes with such a high upfront cost. So there are some things you can do, like weather stripping windows or adding storm windows either on the inside or the outside that might have a lower upfront cost and allow you to save some energy and feel more comfortable. But it really is that first cost that's causing windows not to be at the top of the list. So if not windows, then what should I do first? So the attic and the basement are very likely areas to focus on in most houses. The other part of this answer is really, well, it depends on your house. Um, there are lots of common areas where there's leakage, but each house is a little bit unique in what is going on in that house and how to properly fix it. So here are a lot of those common areas, and the arrows here describe how hot air is leaving your house and how cold air is coming in. Now, most people are aware of the fact that hot air rises, and thus the top of the building is very important to be tight. Otherwise, you'll lose all that hot air out the top. What a lot of people don't necessarily understand is that at the same time as you're losing the hot air out the top of the building, air is coming in down lower in the building that is cold, and that's where you're feeling the drafts. So you're feeling the drafts down low, but you're losing a lot of heat up high. And both of those areas are very important to focus on. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that this stack effect of cold air coming in, warming up, and rising and leaving out the top of the building means that the pressures that the house is seeing down low and up high are higher than the pressures that the house sees in the middle of the house. And the reason that matters is that you lose more air at higher pressures. So even if the hole is the same size at the middle of the building, you're actually going to be leaking less heat out that spot than you are if the hole is up high in the building. So another view on where to focus, really the attic is the number one, ceiling attic area. Rim joists, which is the perimeter of the floor that sits on top of the foundation, is another very common high value improvement. And then the basement and foundation walls is another high value improvement. Now, when you're making these improvements, it's important to think about both the sweater or the fleece and the shell or the windbreaker. Without the two combined, you don't really get the comfort and savings that you might be looking for or you might be expecting to get with what you're paying for. And everyone can, this sort of analogy, a lot of people can relate to, because we live in Vermont. You put a sweater on or a fleece and you go outside and it's windy, and the wind tends to blow through that thermal layer that you have put on and rendering you cold. So you go get your shell and you put it on over your fleece. And then, technology comes along and creates wind block fleece to take care of it for you. And so there's a lot of those kind of analogies can relate back to how you're going to insulate your building. But the main point is you really have to stop the air and insulate. You can't just add insulation and expect to have a successful project. Question 3, my basement is damp and I'd rather weatherize my main living space. Is that okay? Well, not really. If your basement is damp or wet, that really should be addressed as part of any weatherization project that you take on. And this is important because as you tighten your house, you are then going to be trapping the moisture in your house that you have in your basement. And that can lead to some problems that you'd rather not deal with, I'm sure, or not have to deal with. So dealing with a damp basement, or if it's wet, then you really need to make sure that water is drained away properly. Things like sump pumps that are working appropriately. If it's really bad, you might need to add some internal drainage, some external gutters or grading of the home. And then if it's just damp, you have a dirt crawl space or something, there really needs to be a vapor barrier over that dirt that is part of your weatherization effort. So this is a picture showing spray foam on a foundation wall. Now, this is a very common improvement and really helps a lot with keeping a basement dry from the dampness of the rock. And if the floor that this person is standing on was dirt, you'd really need a very strong, stronger than your typical plastic vapor barrier across the floor that is rolled up the edges and sealed to the foam. And that seals all the moisture out and keeps it in the ground, so it doesn't come into this nicely insulated and dry basement that's been created. Question 4, I need a new roof. Does it make sense to do attic insulation then? Well, maybe. And I have a couple pictures to try to help illustrate this. So a lot of weatherization can happen without having to remove siding or remove roofing to access it. But if you have the type of ceiling that doesn't have an attic around it, and typically these are cathedral ceilings or slope ceilings, then that might be your only chance to really get it right. This photo is a thermal image of a tongue and groove ceiling. Now, tongue and groove ceilings are notorious for being leaky because every 6 inches or so, you just have a tongue and groove joint. It's not like a sheet of sheetrock that is mudded and taped and sealed on all edges, creating a nice air barrier. So this example of a really nice post and beam house with tongue and groove ceilings, the black marks is cold air. So the infrared image is showing cold air being sucked in during a blower door test and leaking through all the corners and the joints of the tongue and groove. In this scenario, yes, at the time of a new roof is probably the best time to address this. So here are 2 more pictures that are signs of heat loss. These houses are right next to each other. One's been weatherized, one is not. They're actually Sears kit homes. And the top circle you can see here on the left image is the snow melt happening from air leaking into an attic space. And on the picture on the right, they were able to go up into that attic space, seal the leaks and re-insulate, and now there's no snow melt. These pictures were taken on the exact same day, exact same time. And so this is a really good image of how to see what might be going wrong and what it could look like if it's right. And the icicles indicate this as well. Some more signs of heat loss. Now, these 2 pictures, again, same day, different day than the last 2 pictures, but same day, houses right across the street from each other. The image on the left, you can see how the snow, well, first of all, on the eaves of both houses, you can see how the snow is staying. There's no snow melt, there's no heat loss. And as you get past the overhangs and you get into this picture on the left, you have an attic space that is letting a lot of warm air into that attic from the house and melting the snow on the roof. And you can kind of tell by this house that there's a section of slope ceiling that comes down to a short wall. And so this slope ceiling has insulation in the rafters, keeping the snow from melting. Now, the house on the right, the attic has been weatherized of this house. You see very little snow melt up on the top where the attic is. This is the north face too, so it didn't get any any sun yet. And on the slope ceiling, interestingly, this house has been weatherized. These slopes are insulated. Now, with old homes, you only have either 4-inch or 6-inch rafters to be able to insulate. And so when you put that much insulation in, you get maybe R20, and you tend to still melt snow because all you could do was R20. And the interesting thing about this, I'm flipping back and forth, this house on the left is that you can see where the rafters are, the roof rafters, because wood is not as good an insulator as insulation. So the snow melts where the wood is. And even if you have R20 in your roof, you still only have R6 at your rafters every 16 inches or so. So the question of, should I insulate at the time of re-roof? Well, maybe if your house looks like this, then the most effective way to deal with a slope ceiling where you have only 6 inches of room for insulation is to put the insulation on the outside under a new roof. It can be costly to do that, so that's certainly one of the factors to consider. But that would be a scenario where you might want to do this before you or during a re-roofing project. Question 5 is making my home airtight dangerous? Not if you do it right. And so it can be, sure, there are things you need to be paying attention to, and I'm going to go through a couple of them. But if you do it right, it's not dangerous to do it. So airtight and ventilate right is kind of the mantra. You want to make your building airtight to stop that heat loss, to stop the condensation from happening inside your wall cavities or in your attic. And you want to be able to then control where you're pushing the air. So if you make it airtight by stopping leaks in the right places, using the appropriate materials, then you can do it in a way that's not going to cause rot or mold to happen inside your wall or roof cavities. The other piece is that you want to make sure to manage any moisture. So we talked about the damp basement and that being a very important thing to address. Well, you also need to make sure any bath fans or dryer vents, kitchen fans that are all routed outside. When you're blowing air through a fan to outside, it's pushing moisture out. So you want to make sure you're pushing that moisture to outside and not up into an attic or down into a basement. And then the third thing on this list is mechanical ventilation. And what we know about new homes and building airtight homes is that a mechanical ventilation system is helpful to improve indoor air quality and manage moisture. So if you're able to get your house tight enough, if you're fortunate enough to get your house tight enough where you're not leaking so much air naturally, then installing a mechanical ventilation system, that could be a full whole house ducted air-to-air heat exchanger in a perfect world, or it could be an energy efficient bath fan or two that are running very often or continuously to create some air exchange. And the reason that's better than just letting you air leak through your house is that you can control where you're pushing that air. Instead of letting that air leak into a wall or roof cavity and possibly causing some condensation problems, you can suck that air out and deliver it directly to the outside where it's not going to cause any condensation problems. And there still is energy savings to be had when you airtight and ventilate right. Now, combustion safety is the other important thing to avoid dangers. Evaluate and test. So you need to make sure that if you have atmospherically drafting equipment like a chimney vented boiler or furnace or a water heater that's using the natural buoyancy of air to get pulled up a chimney. You need to make sure that those chimneys are still working even when the house is buttoned up. And the way to do this is to test. There are contractors that are BPI certified that have been trained to evaluate these systems. And the picture here is a smoke test. And the process is you turn on all of the bath fans, all the exhaust fans in the house, the dryer, everything that sucks air out of the house. And you make sure the house is all buttoned up, windows closed, latched, doors closed. And then you turn on the heating system. And in that condition, does it still suck smoke up the chimney? Or are all the other fans that are operating competing enough with that chimney vent that it's causing it to puff back? And so this kind of test is something that's standard for home performance projects and weatherization projects from the state, and is really important to make sure if you are really getting tight, this becomes something you have to address either with bringing in air or creating some other conditions that allow it to work properly. Question 6. Will Efficiency Vermont do the work in my home, or do the contractors work for them? So the answer is that the contractors don't work for Efficiency Vermont. These are these are contractors in the Efficiency Excellence Network that operate in the home performance program that we'll get into a little bit. These are private contractors. They're making a living doing weatherization work on homes, and they're the ones that are really in the trenches doing this stuff. They're private contractors. Being part of the EEN means that they are Building Performance Institute trained and certified. And the EEN also does kind of minimum oversight in terms of making sure these contractors are providing service in a moral way and are listed and have insurance, that kind of basic stuff. So yeah, they don't work for Efficiency Vermont. We're affiliated in partnership to deliver weatherization services. So options. Oops. Comprehensive weatherization is one of the options. And the Efficiency Vermont's program is the Home Performance with Energy Star. Now there are also programs with Vermont gas systems. If you're in a Vermont gas system served home, and statewide, there's a weatherization program for income eligible households. So we'll get to that again in a minute. For comprehensive weatherization, the basics here are you use one of these EEN contractors. You achieve a minimum air leakage target of 10%, which is really very achievable in most homes. The average air leakage reduction for this program is somewhere around 30%. And there's 0% financing and incentives, which we'll get into again a little bit later. So then there's the Vermont Gas Weatherization Program, and then we do run a do-it-yourself program, which is a fairly simple rebate to cover materials needed to complete a couple projects, 3 eligible projects. So we've outlined a little bit what we'd recommend for the type of project and whether it's best served DIY or through home performance. And the stuff that's DIY typically fall into the category of weather stripping, insulating pipes. There's a few other things like maybe dealing with an attic hatch or some other air sealing work by sealing holes and leaks in the rim joist. But it's limited to fairly simple work that most Vermonters can take on and doesn't really push the house into this category of, well, we should really test and evaluate. We want to make sure things are done right. They're very simple that I can think of it's hard to do harm by doing these kinds of projects. And then there are projects that are more comprehensive, thorough air sealing around the basement, around the attic, throughout the house, adding insulation to those areas, and checking the health and safety. And those are the types of projects that line up well with the home performance program. One option to get started is that Efficiency Vermont offers a virtual home energy visit. And so this is a free assessment of your home, and it's done with the technology that we're all now familiar using after the pandemic, or because of the pandemic. And we can get on a video call with you on the other end, walk us around your home, you show us what's going on, what are your concerns, and we can have a conversation that's really informed by seeing the building. And it's really amazing how much, how rich that conversation can be by being able to see what's going on in your home, even just over the phone. So this is a great offer. You'd receive a list of recommendations that are very specific to what we discussed during that call. And it's also a really great visit to sort of test the waters as to whether a full home performance audit is a good idea and the right path for you, or whether there's a different path that might make more sense. So that's a great offer and an option to look for. Weatherization assistance. This is the free statewide weatherization I mentioned earlier. And if you are an eligible household, and you can contact your community action group based on the county that you live in. But if you're income eligible, this is a free service. The auditors will come in, they will scope what the work needs to be, and then they'll get on the schedule for getting the weatherization crew there to actually do it. So if you are one of these income eligible households, this is your first place to go to see if you're eligible. They do great work. They've got a great track record, and it's free for you if you're eligible. So if you're not eligible, how can you afford this? It's a challenge for sure. With everything being as expensive as it is right now, weatherization is expensive as well. Now we can help. We have incentives available, and right now those incentives are 75% of a project cost up to $2,000, or up to $5,000 if you're income eligible. So 75% of project costs up to $2,000 if you're income qualified, and these are incomes much higher than the free weatherization service. Household income, it's up to $5,000, 75% of the cost, which is a great incentive. It's never been as good as that. Now, if you're in Vermont Gas territory, they have great offers as well. You're 50% back of project cost up to $3,500 as a base incentive, and you can also get that income qualified household incentive as a Vermont Gas customer as well. And if you're a landlord or a renter, Vermont Gas has some offers that enhanced incentives for those scenarios. You can find information at our website and Vermont Gas website as well, and get you on your way. You do need to work with an EEN contractor for this incentive. That's a key point, and there is a list of those contractors at the website. Now, if you're just wanting to chip away at it, just get started, do a couple things to make your home a little bit better this winter. Because I should mention that contractors are extremely busy. As if you've tried to hire any type of contractor recently, you know they're very busy. It's hard to get them scheduled, and weatherization is no different. So be patient with the hire a contractor route. It's something that would probably bring you to early next year to actually be getting this work done if you start now. So don't delay. Don't switch lines in the grocery store get started and follow that path on their schedule, and they'll get you taken care of. But there is this DIY rebate for a few projects, some weatherization, some air sealing materials that you can find information on our website as well. Of course, it's hard to front the money for this work, even if there is a big incentive at the end. So there's some financing options. The home energy loan is a very simple loan process. You can work with one of these participating lenders, the SECU, Opportunities, or NeighborWorks of Western Vermont. And you can include several projects. If you want to do just one or you want to do several, you can include all this list in your loan. And you can see the 0% loan here for the households that are within these income thresholds. And the asterisk is just to go check the website or call the credit union to find out what the actual income limits are that apply to you. So potentially 0% financing and a $5,000 incentive to get $8,000 worth of work done is a really really appealing thing to go after right away. So to do that, you can call Efficiency Vermont, talk to one of our great customer support specialists. You can schedule a free home energy visit right on our website. You can find a contractor on our website. You want to find a pro and then select weatherization as the type. If you're a Vermont Gas customer, definitely call Vermont Gas and see what services are available to you from them. And again, if you are eligible for the free weatherization, contact your community action agency as a first step. So before we jump into questions, we do have a couple more weatherization Wednesdays coming up. The 19th, we'll talk about financing. So that financing offer that I mentioned, there'll be a deep dive into that. And then October 26th, the heat pumps for your home and using heat pumps to heat your home is the discussion, which many people are interested in for good reason. We also have some upcoming local and regional events. So in person, you can come to one of these events and visit with Efficiency Vermont staff and other community groups who are working to arrange those. And for a full list, you can check buttonupvermont.org, the events section of that website, to find out which events are close to you. All right, questions.
A lot of questions are coming in. Thanks so much, Matt, for that presentation. Super informative. We've gotten some answers in the chat from our Efficiency Vermont, but I will just ask a few questions that are coming in. We have a question from Robin that said, I had an energy efficiency contractor insulate my attic 2 years ago. At the time, I considered a heat pump, but it pushed the project a little out of my financial reach. Now that heating oil is so expensive, it makes more sense to invest in a heat pump. Can I still get assistance from, I think you meant Efficiency Vermont, rebates or 0% financing, or am I limited because I already got assistance? I feel like I could take a stab and just say, but Matt, if you want to jump in, I'll just say that you can still take advantage of the rebates that Efficiency Vermont offers for heat pumps, which you can find on our website, and maybe someone can put a link in the chat. And some of your utilities also have additional rebates that you can stack with ours. And then Matt did mention the home energy loan, and that can be used for a heat pump project. But Matt, definitely step in if there's anything I'm missing.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, that the incentives that I mentioned from the home performance program and those caps, that $2,000 or $5,000 cap is for the weatherization part of the project. You can still access the incentives for the heat pumps on top of that, or the heat pump water heaters, or the other things that you might do to get off heating oil.
Great. We have another question coming in that says, if we run the bathroom fan in winter, won't it just leak the heat out?
It will. It will leak some of the heat out. And I think the reason why it makes sense is that you are going to be able to stop more air from leaking out into unknown places and potentially cause problems than you would to leak out air through your vent fan, thus saving you energy and controlling where you're blowing that air. That's the general philosophy. But yes, it does take energy to run the fans. If you are in a tight enough building to do that, you will still be saving energy net by reducing the amount of loss and waste that you had up front.
Great. Another question asks, we have lots of moisture on our windows when it's warm outside. Does that mean our house is too tight?
When it's warm outside, you have
when it
condensation
isn't,
on your
sorry, when it
windows.
isn't warm outside. I'm so sorry, I read that question wrong.
Oh, okay.
When it isn't warm outside.
Yeah, so it's cold outside, you get lots of condensation on your windows. That's very common. So, you know, the questions would be, what is the relative humidity inside your home? And you can get a fairly simple and inexpensive meter from your hardware store. Maybe with that $50 you're going to win from being on this call. And you can check relative humidity. And if relative humidity is up, 50, 60%, then yeah, you have too much moisture in your home and you want to ventilate that out. Or you want to stop the source of moisture from coming in, ideally. And that's just showing up as condensation on your windows because your windows are the weakest link.
I did see a question in the chat from Krista that asked how to deal with seasonal streams going through your cellar. And I just want to note that we put a link in the chat to dealing with basement or moisture in your basement in the chat. But Matt, if you have anything else to add, otherwise I'll go to the next.
Yeah, that's a great question, very common question. And that link is a good summary of what you can do, but basically do everything you can to keep it out with gutters and maybe some drainage on the outside. And if you just can't because it's coming in so low, then that's when you might contact a basement specialist really at that point and find out how you can create drainage and sump pump to get it out. Let it come in and get it out.
Great. Let's see what else we have. It's a question about gutters. I don't know. We were told we could not have gutters due to 1850 corbels. Is there anything else we can do for gutters? I don't know if that's.
So if you can't have gutter, I don't fully understand the situation, but if you can't, there's scenarios where gutters are difficult or possibly the wrong choice. There are things you can do with the drip edge where the water or the snow will come off the roof and hit the ground. And if you have to let that water come out and hit the ground, you really want to make sure that that water can then drain away from the house. So in an extreme scenario, you might put a gutter in the ground, a drain pipe in the ground underneath some free draining stone that then directs the water to the outside. That's just one strategy. And again, that link, I think, talks to that scenario as well.
Great. I have another question. It says, I just got my home weatherized through the state program, which was amazing, but now I have a pellet stove, which heats most of the home, but I'm concerned about the pipes freezing in the basement if I'm not running the oil furnace.
Yep, that is a common concern as well. I think, I don't know what they fully did with your weatherization project, but one of the very common improvements is to air seal and insulate the perimeter of that basement. And by doing so, you really reduce the chance of freezing pipes significantly. So I'd be comfortable, if weatherizing that rim was part of the scope of work, that you will be unlikely to face frozen pipes, because it's really the cold air leaking through and at a pipe that's going to cause that frozen pipes.
Mary asked a question. My house is heated with oil and I look forward to switching to a heating method that doesn't use fossil fuels, but I also need to weatherize and both projects have a high price tag. I assume you would recommend doing the weatherization first. Is that correct?
Yeah, weatherization first is a standard answer. You know, I think when it comes to it, you want to understand really the costs of doing each and the benefits of doing each and making a decision. And that's something that we could help with on a phone call or a virtual home energy visit.
Great. Let's see what other questions we have. Kathy asks, how can I figure out what kind of weather stripping I can get for my windows? The plastic window weather stripping is missing from my, I'm trying to read this question to make sure I'm reading it correctly. How can I figure out what kind of weather stripping I can get for my windows? The plastic window weather stripping is missing from many different windows.
Okay. Well, it's a tough one to answer. I think one step you could take is to go to your local hardware store and ask somebody there what they have for window weather stripping and what they would recommend for your particular window. And this is a place where a virtual home energy visit can really help because we actually could see what type of window you have and the location for the weather strip. But normally you would want something that is sort of supple, that is not rigid, so that it can still bend and be flexible even when it's very cold.
We're getting a question about window dressers and the window inserts that you can apply towards the DIY rebate. Because I see the DIY rebate covers window dresser inserts, but if I understand, it doesn't seem like those window inserts really save money because it's not really stopping the air from attic and basement. It might just help window drafts.
Yeah, so they will help with window drafts and they will save energy if you have window drafts. So if you have leaky windows, especially if they're single pane windows or single pane with even with sort of poor aluminum storms, it's very common, then the window inserts like window dressers can be a really good choice to seal it up. And that's kind of what I meant about, windows are a problem for sure. And the leakier they are, the bigger a problem they are. If you can find a low cost solution to help with that, like window dressers, then that's going to help you out.
Great. Gary asks, I have had trouble getting a straight answer on this. Assuming a well-sealed house, is there potential value in insulating under the first floor? I have a basement that gets as low as 50 degrees or high 40s in the winter.
It's a very house specific type question. So in general, it is going to be more efficient to have the insulation layer across your floor. However, as soon as you have pipes, water heaters, boilers, furnaces, other things that are going to have energy embedded in them. So, the hot water pipes or the hot water heater or the heating system itself, you really want your thermal envelope to be enclosing that space. So insulating your basement walls is definitely the recommended way to go if you have any kind of pipes or systems down there.
Okay. And you were talking about walls, Matt, but what about underneath the first floor?
I guess what I'm trying to say is that insulating under the first floor is not a recommended improvement if you have things in your basement that ought to stay warm, like water heaters, pipes, and that sort of equipment. If you had a crawl space that you didn't have any pipes or systems in, then insulating across the floor could be a good solution.
Great, thank you. We have a question. Are people able to take advantage of both the DIY and EEN contractor rebates for weatherization, or do they have to pick one? from my understanding, you can do both. There's definitely some projects that you can do DIY that you can take advantage of the $100 rebate, and then you can also do comprehensive weatherization through their home performance with Energy Star. Matt, anything else to add there?
Yeah, you can take both. I don't think that the types of projects would overlap much. That, you know, the kind of projects you'd get incentivized through home performance might not get incentivized DIY and vice versa. So yeah, do both.
Great. I'm not seeing any more questions. Let me just scroll through the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. It looks like a lot of the questions too were answered in the chat, which is great. But please keep them coming. Speaking of DIY, I think it was put in the chat. There's some good resources that can be found, kind of what DIY projects can do in some tutorials if people are interested in doing DIY projects. I'll give it a little while to see if other people have questions. Feel free to keep putting them in the chat or the Q&A.
I've always thought it would be fun to do like a Stump the Chump kind of radio show, you know, like somebody calls in and say, hey, you know, 10 years ago you recommended that I do this, and cross your fingers that, you know, they had good experience. But
Yeah. We have another question coming in. Are there more resources about roof insulation with pictures like what Matt showed?
Yeah, roof insulation. That there are lots of resources out there. I think I don't think we have any on our website related to weatherization. We probably have some related to new construction, because it kind of falls into that category of like during a building project, you could do this as part of your roof assembly. That's a good one to call in on. But generally it would really involve working with your roofer about how to lay insulation properly. And it also brings up questions about, well, if there's currently a roof vent there, you don't really want to be venting your roof underneath new insulation. So, you know, making sure that you integrate all these pieces to that roof in the right way. We could definitely get you some links and stuff if you wanted to reach out to us for some technical assistance.
Great. We have a great question. Is it true that the air I breathe in my house could be coming from my basement?
Yeah. You know, when we do blower door tests, you know, this is when we test the air tightness, or a contractor might test the air tightness of the building. It's very clear that the air connections between the basement and the house are prevalent. And so that's one reason why it's so helpful to improve indoor air quality and comfort to weatherize your basement and make it a dry and warm space. Can really help with the indoor air quality of the building.
Great. Bob is encouraging everyone to share this recording with their friends. With high energy prices, he says efficiency pays for itself much faster. Thanks, Bob. Krista says there is a stream through the cellar house. When the ground is frozen and it rains, the cellar walls look like Niagara Falls. I'm guessing they should not be foamed.
Correct. Yeah, definitely do not try to foam that type of wall. That's a scenario where you really want to do your research, possibly reach out to a basement water remediation specialist. You know, there are a few of them around the state, and find out a way to solve that problem before you insulate it.
Jeffrey says, I have a thermostat that is programmable. I can't even say that word, but I know what you mean. Is there a rule of thumb on how low to turn down a thermostat during the day when no one is home?
As low as you can and still get the house warm when, you know, warm for you when you get back. I mean, it's no sense in heating when you're not there, but you want it to be warm when you return. So if you set it back to 60 and the systems, you're able to program it, say an hour ahead of time to come back up to 70 for when you get home, that's great. There's no sense in heating it when you're not there.
Christine asks, I have an attic only accessible through a trap, which I could not show on a phone call. What would be my option going through the weatherization work?
Do you have an attic access through a trap door, a scuttle hatch of some sort, it sounds like? Well, the biggest question would be when you open that hatch and can a person get up in there? So ideally somebody can get up into that attic, crawl around and air seal the necessary areas to air seal, and then blow some insulation up on top. If it is it not accessible? Is that the question? Or
it could not show on a phone call. So maybe like thinking a virtual home energy visit might be kind of hard to show that, is what I'm assuming that question is. But Christine, if you have additional comments to your question, maybe we could help answer it.
Yeah, and so one thing I'd say about that is that the energy consultants that you will be hooked up with on one of these virtual home energy visits really know houses and how they were built. And even just seeing the outside of the building and seeing, we do this a lot, just looking at on the internet, on Google or Zillow or something like that. We can really tell a lot about your house just by seeing how it, what shape it is and where the little nooks and crannies are. So give us a try. We might be able to tell enough about the building to be able to help you understand what to do up there.
Right. Karen asks if there are resources for DIY projects. You came in a little late, so that's totally fine. We can put some links in the chat for you. But just to mention, we do have a DIY rebate for, if you complete 3 eligible projects, you can be eligible to receive a $100 rebate. And you can find all that information on our website, and we'll put a link in the chat. We have another question from Anna. It says, so if my garage is under my first floor / basement, I could be breathing gas fumes potentially. Air sealing could help with that, maybe? ?
Yes, absolutely. That if you have a tuck under garage, or you have a garage that's in your basement, that space could very well be connected to your living space. And in those situations, if you actually do drive your car into that space, then carbon monoxide could make its way into the building. Certainly, carbon monoxide detectors are important to make you aware if there are any immediate CO issues, as are smoke fire detectors. It's a good time of year to check those as well. So one of the pieces of a BPI, Building Performance Institute contractor, is to look at whether a garage is connected to a house's living space and to make sure it's sealed from the living space as part of the project. And health and safety work like that can be included in the costs toward that incentive and can be included in the home energy loan as well. But yeah, very good question, very important thing to look for and address.
Great. We do have some questions about bathroom fans, and some that are very old and noisy and weak, and if you had any suggestions for more efficient, quiet fans.
Absolutely. The Energy Star label, which many people are familiar with, you see them on refrigerators and water heaters. They have it for fans as well, bath fans. And these fans are energy efficient, meaning they're low wattage. They usually come with a LED light if there's a light. And a lot of them also have a variable speed fan that increase its ventilation flow as it faces poor ductwork, whereas a standard fan is just going to be restricted by the ductwork. These, ductwork can be a problem in general, but these other fans can try to overcome poor ductwork by blowing harder with the fan. The other thing I want to say about that is if you are taking on any kind of weatherization project that would make the bath fan vent accessible, making sure that vent is a straight, smooth wall pipe can help a lot in allowing the ventilation system to work well. And it's also a perfect time to replace your fan. So you have someone up there weatherizing and sealing your attic. You replace the fan at the same time because it is old and loud and maybe doesn't work very well and at least annoying to run. Have that fan replaced during that weatherization project so it can be sealed up and vented the way it should be. And then you have a lasting ventilation for the rest of the life of the building, for the fan at least.
Great. We have another question about smoke and fire detectors. If you have, says, can you recommend smoke and fire detectors that actually turn off? I unplugged all of mine because they go off and then I can never get them to stop. I don't know if you have any recommendations for that.
I don't. I think the thing I would suggest is to call your local fire department and ask them what they suggest. They're really the experts on that kind of thing. And I think a large portion of their calls are to deal with CO alarms and smoke alarms. So call them. They know smoke detectors better than I do.
Great. I think we're getting to the end of the questions. Let me just see. Someone asks, my thermostat is set about 65, but the temperature inside is about 75 degrees. Is there something wrong with my thermostat? I don't think the heat has come on this fall at all.
Well, that's a good position to be in. So you set your thermostat at 65 and the house stays at 75 and you don't think your system is coming on at all to maintain that. Is that what I understand?
That was my impression. Roxanne, if you have something else to add, but I think that's, yeah, I don't think the heat has come on this fall at all.
It sounds like you may not need much weatherization. That sounds like a scenario where you're having you have a comfortable home without adding any heat to it, which is a good sign. Now, if there is something on that you just don't know, like is there electric resistance heat on? Sometimes people don't know that they have some electric resistance heat running. Keep an eye on your electric bill. If it looks way out of whack, maybe that's what's going on. Or if you have some other heat source that's keeping your house warm. I would say if it's 78, your thermostat's set at 65 and the system's not coming on, that's exactly what should be happening.
That sounds great. I wish my apartment did that. Gary asks, is it feasible to apply rigid foam insulation on the outside of above ground exposed concrete foundation walls?
Yes, it is feasible, especially if it's poured concrete or block and it's flat surface. And the key would be to getting that board insulation to be flat, tight against the foundation wall. And ideally, you're going down below ground, and that would require some digging. And so if you can't go below ground, the general recommendation is to try to get 4 feet down or down and out. And down and out meaning some wing insulation. So you go down your walls as far as you're willing to dig down, but then also dig out and put some horizontal insulation to make up the whole 4 feet. And that actually is a really good way to also provide some drainage of water away from the foundation. Because if the water comes off the drip edge or the rain gets into that ground, it would then hit that horizontal insulation, which should be pitched slightly away from the house. Then the water hits that pitched insulation that's and is directed away from the house. So you get both some water management, you get some keeping the ground warmer next to the foundation wall, and you get some insulation at the above grade part.
Great. Well, it looks like we are at time. So thanks so much, Matt, for that great presentation and answering all of those questions. And thanks all for attending the webinar and for all the great questions you posed. We hope you'll join us for the upcoming Weatherization Wednesdays. Again, Matt previewed the next two that are coming up, and you can find all the details to register at buttonupvermont.org. And with that, thanks so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye all.
Thank you all for joining.